Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Carlisle United, the team that's on the ball. Carlisle United, the team for one and all. You're looking good, and we're with you all the way. You'll hear us singing every time you play.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of the Brunton Bugle, your one-stop shop for all things Carlisle United. From Brunton Bugle to Colin Meffin and Sam Cosgrove to Tom Cowan, we've got it covered. In today's episode we're going to be looking back at two really professional and excellent performances against Southend and Scunthorpe, looking ahead to another two big games against Barrow and Newport County, as well as a roundup of what ex-Blues have been getting up to over the last week or so. I'm joined this episode by one of my co-hosts. Today it's Mike Booth. We've broken the record of 3 episodes in a row with 2 hosts, Mike. It's just me and you today, isn't it? How's it going, mate?
Yeah, it's going good. I think Dan's afraid to face me again in the quiz after my excellent performance last week now.
He's taking pity on you more like.
Probably, yeah. No, but yeah, it's good. You know, we're coming into this podcast now after 3 wins in a row, so things are looking up and hopefully we've turned the corner.
Oh, definitely. Oh, the way things are going. There's no news this week. Nothing really happening off the pitch, so it's all good. It's all about the games right now, isn't it? That's the way it's going. So let's get straight into it, Mike, then. Let's get into the match reviews. So looking back at the wins over Southend and Scunthorpe, both by 2-0, which I'm sure Dan will be telling everybody he predicted when we play his little clip at the end. He sent me in an audio clip with his predictions for this week, so he can be included in the prediction section, even though he's not able to record with us. But yeah, 2 great wins, really. Both by 2-0. I mean, surely not. Surely, is the dream still alive, Mike? Are we going to make the playoffs?
Well, I kind of wrote it off a few weeks ago, and this is why I hate this club. Yeah, this is why I hate this club sometimes, because they give you hope, don't they? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's yeah, but it's all to play for. It really is, and you know, we're coming in good form now, and I find that form is often a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you like. You know, we've just won 3 and we haven't conceded in them, so other teams are going to be a little bit more wary of us rather than having a go at us so much. So yeah, you know, there's some very big games. I mean, the Barrow game is obviously a big 6-pointer, and you know, I say 6-pointer. No, it's not 6-pointer, but the Newport game is the 6-pointer.
Yeah.
And,
but the Barrow game's a big game for both teams, though, isn't it? They're trying to pull away from the bottom.
Definitely.
And we're trying to pull ourselves towards the top 7. And it's worth noting, over the Easter weekend, only 2 teams in League 2 took maximum points. And that was ourselves. And do you know who the other one was?
Was it Cambridge?
No, it was Port Vale.
Oh.
Port Vale really hit a really good run of form, which is worrying because we've got them in a few weeks as well, actually. In fact, no, not even a few weeks. Next weekend, we've got Port Vale at home. Yes, I mean, we're just on the cusp of that playoff place now. We're just outside it. And the fact that this week we've got that game in hand again, and it's against Newport. So we're gaining up on other teams potentially, but also gaining on Newport themselves. It just gives you that little bit of belief, doesn't it, that maybe, just maybe, we can do this.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not even necessarily Newport. I mean, like, Forest Green haven't won in the last 5 games, you know, and I sort of shooed them in to be going up automatically, and they just seem to have dropped off the face of the earth themselves.
I mean, they've been badly hit, haven't they, by the fact that Jamil Matt picked up that. If you haven't seen it, it's that absolutely horrific injury he got against Bolton. And it was game live on Sky Sports, and I think essentially, it looked like he dislocated every finger, didn't it? It was. It's not a pretty sight. If you're squeamish, don't bother looking at it. If you're interested in that kind of thing, go and search it out, because it's quite a sight. But their team seems to be built so much around playing with him as your talisman.
Exactly.
Take him out of the team, and suddenly they just don't seem to know what to do they? And I was tweeting the guys from the Heavens Devils podcast, who we obviously did a few bits with early this season, and they were saying like that. You know, they were really gunning for a top 3 finish, but now if they finish top 7, they'll be delighted, and you can understand that almost. You imagine they're probably looking and thinking, let's scrape 3 1-0 wins from these remaining games, and that should secure us a top 7 place, they'd hope. But you're right, a lot of teams are dropping off. I mean, even Bolton, they lost to Newport in that game, and they're not a million miles away. And obviously Morecambe in midweek only managed to draw against Southend, who we obviously beat at the weekend. So it's one of those ones that teams, it just seems like the teams that are in the playoffs are the ones that are really panicking a little bit at the moment, whereas the teams just outside of it, ourselves and Leyton Orient, for instance, and even Salford getting a good result of the weekend, are just starting to fancy themselves to push for a place in the top 7, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, Leyton Orient are unbeaten in the last 7. So
that result doesn't look quite so bad against them now, does it? Actually, I know it wasn't a great performance, but in the grand scheme of things,
But I think it's certainly going to go right to the wire. I think there could be drama on the final day, which knowing Carlisle, we'll be doing it on the final day if we're going to do it, won't we? Do you know what I mean?
Well, it suits us quite well, that, because if you look who we've got on the final day, we've got Walsall as our last game. The 2 games before that, we'll get into this in the preview section, but the 2 games before that are Cheltenham and Leyton Orient. So if you come out of those with good results, you'd fancy us, wouldn't you? In that sense, but there you go. Okay, well, let's look back at the games then, Mike. First up, the Southend game. Let's not beat about the bush here. This was an absolutely bloody awful game of football, wasn't it? Not many redeeming features from it.
No, it really was. And I think the scoreline, it looks nice, sort of a 2-0 away win, but that Farman penalty save at 1-0, it could have gone very differently, that game. But yeah, in the end, we were worthy winners. They didn't really test us very much, did they?
The penalty was the only shot on target they had.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is telling me, isn't it?
Yeah, and we scored the sort of 2 best chances that we probably had. So, it was a just win, but it wasn't a nice game to watch.
It wasn't. I mean, you could argue Southend. I mean, I thought they looked a better side when we played them earlier in the season. They looked like they had a bit more heart in that game earlier in the season. In this game, they looked like a team that knew they were going down. There wasn't really much fight about them, was there, really, to get in the game. We were very professional, I thought, actually. We did our jobs, and it's one of these things that always stands out to me. If you're a team that's struggling near the bottom, you should be at least putting a few tackles in and, making the effort, shouldn't you? When you look at the stats from the game, Southend have picked up 1 booking, and they've only committed 8 fouls over the 90 minutes.
Yeah, although, to be honest, I mean, it was more the Scunthorpe game that they seem to really be sort of flying players at some of our shots from outside the box and stuff. That sort of them heroic putting your body on the line, and that's something that we've been missing a little bit since we've come back.
Yeah, so we'll touch on the Scunthorpe game a little bit later, I think, Mike. But in terms of this game, we've got to talk about Ozzy's goal, haven't we? That's the real highlight from the game, wasn't it? I mean, every touch he took in that goal was outstanding, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean that chest control, players at League 2 level can't do that. Like the way that he just left the man for dead with his chest, and then just carried on into the box. He somehow got it onto his right foot as well. It seemed to be more favourable for his left. And just what a goal. I mean, it's one of them. I think the goal of the season compilation this season, I think that'll definitely be on there.
Oh, you'd imagine so, wouldn't you? It's the thing that stood out for me was the fact that chest control you mentioned there, he's a good 3 or 4 feet off the air, when he does it. To be able to bring it down like that and take the man out of the game with that 1 touch was brilliant. And then it was every touch after that, there was nothing particularly, like even when he got into the air and he gets it onto his right foot, it's not a bad touch, that. It looks a bit clumsy, but it's not. It's a great touch just to get it out of his feet. And then we haven't seen a player who can really hit ball like that from the edge of the area for us for a while, actually. It's really nice to see. And you mentioned a few games ago that he looks like a player who's a 6-yard box goal scorer, didn't you? Well, I think he's shown now that he can actually do a little bit more, doesn't he?
That definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just going to say, for me, his contract's up in the summer. We need to tie him down. We really, really do.
He does look a prospect, doesn't he? Was he only 22 still?
I think so.
That's the thing that stands out for me as well. So hopefully we can get him tied down. The penalty, we sort of touched on it briefly there before. But I mean, what a dreadful decision that was. I know James and Lummy had a different view, so they at first thought it looked like a nailed-on one. But as soon as I saw it in real time, I thought, that doesn't look like a foul. It looked like guy's kind of sort of swung to go for the ball, but he hasn't swung anywhere near the player. And the player's just seeing the leg out and just throwing himself down. I don't know how the ref's been conned out of that one.
No, definitely. But it's one of them. If you stick your leg out in the area nowadays, it's unfortunate. But if a player goes down and you've stuck your leg out, the referee's probably going to give it. And justice was served when it was saved, and it was a good save as well.
Not a great penalty, but it was still a good save though, because he telegraphed it well. And Farman, I think what you give Farman credit for is he's read the player there, hasn't he? Because there's only one place he's putting that ball with the style of run up and the way he was running up to it. For me,
yeah, definitely. And like I said before, if we hadn't saved that, it could have been a different game. So it's good that we did that, and we finally got a bit of. I don't want to call it luck, but these things have finally gone in our favour a little bit.
Yeah, we didn't panic there, dude. That was a big thing as well. We just kept playing our game. We didn't worry about the fact that maybe we weren't. Because you look at the stats, we didn't actually create that many chances. We only had 8 shots in the whole game, which is quite low by our standards. Didn't panic though, and then Toure comes on late on, and we've been willing him to do this for a while, haven't we? To when he cuts inside from the left, to just hit it and hit the target. And fair play, he used the defender really well as a shield, didn't he? And just played it round. The keeper had no sight of it at all and was never going to stop it.
It was one of them ones as well that I like when, from where the camera was, you knew it was going in before it even passed the keeper, and before it even hit the net.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which was great to see, and we need him to be doing more of that now, and maybe an impact sub is the role that he's going to be playing in the running.
Yeah, I think he can do that job really well, and he's good at keeping hold of the ball generally as well. I actually noticed that again in the Scunthorpe game when he came on. He did really well to hold on to the ball a few times down the left, and he's going to have a role to play. There can be no doubt about that in the running. I think he's going to play a big role for us. Okay, I think that's enough about the Southend game. Like I said, there's not a huge amount to talk about from it just because it was a poor quality game of football. The Scunthorpe game, on the other hand, was much more like it, wasn't it, Mikey? We looked like the Carlisle team of pre-Christmas for long periods of this game. There was a brief period when Scunthorpe got in it, but you expect that team to can have little spells in games. But the second half in particular, we looked so strong, didn't we? And there was a period, I think it was about 4 or 5 minutes, round about when the goals were, where we just absolutely battered their goal, didn't we?
Yeah, well, you said that we had 8 shots all game in the Southend game. Well, the second half of that Scunthorpe game, we had 14 shots in 15 minutes. That
tells you a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we could have gone in at half-time, 2-0 down. Even though I think we had more of the ball, they had 2 very good chances that, again, we needed Farman to save. But, yeah, I mean, second half, we just absolutely battered them. And to be honest, the goals that we scored, we had better chances than that we didn't score. I mean, that Zanzala chance, that was unlucky, and McDonald forced a really good save from their keeper to tip the ball over the bar. But I think they were just been absolutely bombarded in that second half, and we just it could have ended up 4-5-0 in the end.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think they could have argued if the scoreline had been that. You mentioned about the 2 saves, and I think it is worth actually mentioning. Because you look at those 2-0 wins and you think, 2 great results over those games, but Paul Farman has played a big role in those 2 games, hasn't he? Definitely, with the penalty save, obviously. But those 2 saves in the first half and Scunthorpe, the only 2 shots they had on target the whole game. And they were 2 good efforts as well. They weren't, one of them as well, the one from O'Malley, I think it was. The great thing about that one was he had just enough soft hands to push it wide rather than push it back into danger. He pushed it away from a player, and then from the resulting corner, made another great save. And I think sometimes you do forget this season how good he's actually been, because for long periods he hasn't had a lot to do, because we do have such a good defence in terms of, I think there was a stat, wasn't there? I think we've got the second best in the EFL in terms of the number of shots per game, 8.4 on average that we face.
Well, we went 2 or 3 games in a row without him facing a shot at all, didn't we?
I mean, obviously, when you think about the bad period we had as well during the code break and everything like that, if you take that out of it, our stats would be even more incredible, wouldn't they? So, but yeah, big shout out to Paul, and it's worth noting he's now on 12 clean sheets for the season. I think from 36 games, I think it is he's played. Yeah, obviously because what's he call him's played a couple of games, hasn't he? Norman as well. He only needs 3 more clean sheets from this last 8 games for the best performance from a keeper for us since Kieran Westwood in 07-08, Well, he got 18 from 48 games that season, also with the 2 playoff games as well. And it should be noted, the other 2, I think they were nearest there, Jack Bonham in the season when he was on loan, and Adam Collin in 2010, 2011. Both got 14, so he's close to matching those 2 and possibly overtaking them. And I wouldn't back against it, to be honest. The way he's playing, I mean, like I said, he's 3 games in a row now with clean sheets. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I mean, generally speaking, strikers in pre-season aim for like the 20 goal mark. Keepers tend to aim for the 15 clean sheets mark, and yeah, he'll probably, hopefully, he'll get that by the end of the season.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you? So, yeah, another game again where the last couple of games, patience has been one of the key things, and I think Chris Beach talked about this with the radio and with the newspaper after the game, and I think it was clear in this game as well. We just had to be patient. We had that period when we were bombarding. We didn't have to panic. Just keep pressing. We were going to get the goals, and it finally came. And BFJ's big John back with the goals, isn't he? What a guy!
Yeah, definitely. And well, you know, he's been getting in the right areas the past few games, and I wouldn't put it past him to go on a little run again now with his goals. But slightly bold shout yet again, which seems to become a weekly occurrence now. But I wouldn't say no to him getting the captain's armband, you know, because it's not something that you see a lot on iFollow, but he seems to be talking quite a lot to his teammates, and just his sheer work rate. I feel if your captain is putting in that effort, that'll lift other players around him.
I think to be honest, would keep it away from him for now, just so he can concentrate on his game as much as anything. But possible future option there, yeah, it's not a bad shout. It's his 4th brace of the season. I've got to say, both really well taken goals. You know, from the set up by Callum Guy again as well. He's now the top assist maker in the division. Well done to him. Yeah, I just, great header for the first, and the awareness for the second as well, and the constant pressure for that second goal is really impressive, because your corner comes in, we nearly have a chance. It comes out to Riley at the edge of the box, and tell you what, if the defender doesn't get away in that, I think that's going in the back of the net, because the way he struck across the ball was brilliant. Ball comes out to Guy, and he improvised brilliantly, just hit it with the outside of his foot, and then Mel is just aware enough to know, if I just stab something on this, it's going in the back of the net. You don't need to hammer it. You don't need to try and place it. Just get your foot on the end of it, and it's going to go in. And obviously, he went into the roof from there. And there's a great video if you've seen the club's GoPro footage of the second goal. Let's just say the keeper is not very impressed with his defenders' marking on that goal, is he? I think it's fair to say.
No.
But no, like I said, brilliant for John, and I genuinely think he deserves to be man of the match even without the goals. I thought he looked our best player at times. The way he was driving forward, he was putting the ball into the box at the right hand. He was using the ball really well. He really is growing into the role of the last few games, because he's not had the goals since December was it? I think his last goal possibly. I can't remember exactly when it was. His last goal. It's been that long. But even without the goals over the last 3 or 4 games, I think he's been really good. I think he's very aware of the game around him now, and he knows when to drive with the ball forward. He's playing off the ball a lot better. He's still got to work a bit on his technique a little bit. He does overhit passes occasionally. But, that's going to come in time. He's learning in the role, and fair play to the lad. And like I said, I really hope he can kick on and get a few more goals for the rest of the season, because I think he can play a big part in us getting into the playoffs at least.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I will say, though, is that I think his teammates need to maybe have a little bit more faith in him sometimes. Like, sometimes he'll chase down an absolute lost cause, and he'll get the ball, but he's like in a bit of a corner with like 3 or 4 opposition players around him, and there's not a lot that he can do with it. Like, whereas I think teammates need to sort of, be able to make themselves available when he's chasing one of them lost causes, perhaps. Yep,
I think you're absolutely right with that. He nearly scored a perfect hat-trick as well, didn't he? Because he had that shot from about 25 yards that only just went over the bar. And he also scored with his head and scored with his right foot. So, he hopefully he'll go beyond the brace and get a hat-trick soon. That's what we're really hoping for with him. If we're going to focus on other individual players, I've picked a few more out here. And this is one that actually, I think it was Chris Coulthard, or Craig Coulthard, I think it is, on Twitter, asked us about it. And Rod McDonald, I think he deserves a bit more praise than he's getting. And you know what? I think considering the stick he got a few games ago from some fans, he's been outstanding over the last few games for me, and him and Hayden look like the form in that partnership that they had again just before Reece Bennett came into the team, doesn't he?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we said at the time when he was getting a bit of stick that some of it was a little bit over the top. But
he's like worst defender ever and stuff like that. I mean, get a grip. Ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. But particularly in the Scunthorpe game, because something he hasn't really been is a threat on set pieces. But in the Scunthorpe game, he was, and that's great to see, because you want their big men marking our centre halves and leaving John Mellish and March, really, don't you? So. Yeah, I think he's been solid. It's good to have that right-footed centre-back on the right of the pairing and the left-footed centre-back on the left, because it just gives us a little bit more balance. And the way that he goes long when he needs to, and he's able to sort of play it out and be composed when he can as well. So that's great to see.
What I like when he plays it long, and I've said this before, is he looks to pick a pass. He doesn't just hit it long into space. He looks to try and do that crossfield ball over to Patrick on the right, or Alessandro if he's out there. That's what he's always looking for. And I've got no qualms about him playing alongside Hayden for the rest of the season. I'd like to see another defender on the bench soon, hopefully he can get himself fit. But I
was going to say, we don't have a lot of choice about our centre-back partnership at the minute, really.
I think, to be honest, I think Nick Anderton basically is the backup centre-back right now, isn't he, the way it's going? But there you go. Sort of on the topic of Anderton almost, but Jack Armour, we keep mentioning every week, but he really is growing into that role at left-back, isn't he, and making it his own, really. And you'd imagine the way it's going, Anderton's going to have a fight on to get back in the team before the end of the season. Yeah,
definitely. He really is just... It's still mad to believe that he's only 19. He's just such a good young prospect, and his ability on the ball as well for a defender is very good. I think because people have talked about having him as a centre back, but I quite like him going forward as a left back, to be honest with you. So I wouldn't change that right now.
No, I think maybe long term, in the very, very long term, he could be a centre back. But for me, the way he gets forward and gets up and down the pitch, I'm quite happy for him to be left back. And to be honest, I'd rather we maybe worked on Anderton as a centre back, maybe as an option there instead. Another one, George Tanner, quietly getting back to his best, isn't he? It's sort of almost going unnoticed because Armour's doing so well on the left. We're not really noticing the fact that last couple of games for me, Tanner looks more like the player we saw pre-injury, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was kind of thrown in at the deep end a little bit after a long-term injury and then thrown into Saturday, Tuesday a bit. But yeah, I mean, I think because a lot of his game is getting up and down on that right-hand side, and I think as he's got fitter, he's just got better and better at that, hasn't he, really? And hopefully we'll see, him getting some of them balls into the box for players to get on the end of again very soon. I
think what helps him as well is having a consistent partner down the wing as well. So for the last few games, obviously he's had Amari Patrick down there, and I think that really helps because over the games he builds up understanding with players, and even when Alessandro comes out to the right as well. Whereas if we're constantly chopping and changing as we were doing for a short while, it's sometimes difficult because different players have different skill sets and ways you use them, don't they? So I think that's really helped him a bit of consistency as the wing player.
Yeah, again, we tend to play Riley on the right of the midfield three, and he often sort of pitches into that right back slot to help out if he's outnumbered there a little bit. And they obviously have a good understanding, having played together before and stuff. So yeah, it's I'm hoping that while we said before that some teams are slumping a little bit, that we're really coming into our own and we're just going to get better and better.
Yeah, and at the moment, your team's picking itself, really, isn't it? Over the last few games, it's been unchanged, and we mentioned obviously Mellish in midfield, but we've got to mention them again. Joe Riley, his energy is just ridiculous. It's just game by game. I mean, really hope he's not picked up a bad injury in that Scunthorpe game. And Callum Guy as well, looking back to the player we saw, and his set pieces are looking better as well. And like I say, he's got that assist record, or not assist record, but he's top of the assist charts now, and all his stats are in terms of interceptions and tackles are right up there as one of the best midfielders in the division again.
Yeah, definitely. I think with Riley, you touched on that shot that he had in the Scunthorpe game. I think you could probably do a good compilation video of nearly goals from him.
From Joe Riley, yeah.
Yeah, because he's got one hell of a shot on him from distance, and he's been unlucky like so many times. I think but I think there's definitely a 10 to 15 goal a season midfielder in there with him, and hopefully he'll achieve that with us.
I hope so. I think maybe if he can get one or two more before the end of this season, then that's something for him to work on over the summer, isn't it, for next season? Hopefully in League One as well. We'll have to wait and see. Before we move on, the way we play at the moment, when Josh Coyote's fit again, do you bring him back in the team? It's a tough one, isn't it? Because we've seen what a brilliant player he is and how important he's been to our team this season, but I don't think I'd disrupt the setup right now, would you?
No, probably not. I mean, it's hard because I think we've started having this run of form when Beach he rotated a little bit, and some of the players who we've said now they should be starting, they've been playing well because they've been a bit fresh. Because your likes of Alessandra, he had a few games out of the team. Zanzala, he wasn't starting every week, and he was allowed to build his fitness, and now he is starting. Even Riley was rested 1 week and stuff like, and Guy had a few games out. So yeah, I mean, it just depends on how fit the players are. We don't want to tire them out too much, but Coyote is going to struggle to get into that front three because Zanzala, that centre forward spot is his. It really is. And Coyote hasn't been as effective when he's played in one of the wide forward spots. I wouldn't say that Patrick and Alessandra have been at their best, to be honest with you. I think...
the last couple of games Patrick has. I think Patrick's looked like a player who's taken a bit more responsibility. I think he looks really good, actually, to be fair. But
yeah, he's looked better, but for me, he hasn't been at his best. And
no, that's fair enough.
And Alessandra, again, I'm a big fan of his, but I don't think he's been at his best either. So, Coyote might get his chance, or maybe Alessandra and Coyote and Patrick will sort of work hard to knowing that their place in the team is under threat.
Absolutely. But we don't desperately need his throw-ins again now, though, do we? Because turns out we've got 4 players who can take long throw-ins in our squad. Obviously, Coyote, Alessandra, Dickinson, who's sadly out for the rest of the season by the looks of things, and Joe Riley, who's got a long throw in.
Exactly.
We learned that. And it seems like Alessandra's just handed over duties to him now as well, just to take those long throws. So
yeah, exactly.
The interesting stat again that came out, wasn't it, by the fact that I think we're the most effective team in terms of getting shots from long throws as well. So it does show that he's a useful weapon for us. So,
yeah, definitely, yeah. And, you want every little slight advantage that you can, really, where you can get goals from. And it seems to be working for us. And we have quite a big team as well. We've got quite a lot of tall players. So it's only right that we're using this. I think in the modern game, short throw-ins are maybe going to become extinct.
Oh, that's big! Another big Mike Booth showing off the podcast. There you go. The end of the short throwing. There you go. Right, I think that's pretty much the match review stuff done. Another good couple of games. Hopefully another couple of good games to look forward to as well. So we'll be looking ahead to those just after the break. So we'll be back in just a sec.
Hi, this is George Tanner. You are listening to the Brunton Bugle.
And we're back for part 2. And we're going to be looking ahead to the second Cumbrian derby of the season. First up, trip down to Barrow. The A595 derby, as I'd like to call it. I mean, anyone who was ever going to drive down to this game in the A595 was off their rocker, quite frankly, because it's like hell on earth. I mean, it's not too bad on the stretch from Carlisle to Cockermouth and then maybe down to Whitehaven, but once you start to get past Millham and places like that, my God, it is not a fun road to drive on.
I drove down it in a wagon one night in the pitch black, and it was, yeah.
There's one bit in particular where it goes through a village, doesn't it? And it's really tight, and it's not much fun at all, really. So yeah, obviously, it's one of those games, isn't it? The Cumbrian derby that we're all looking forward to. And for this game, we managed to get an opposition fan to discuss with, and it's a very special one. We managed to get Adam Johnson, who's the BBC Radio Cumbria commentator for Barrow games. He sat down with me earlier this week just to have a quick chat about the game and how Barrow have got on in their first season back in the EFL in nearly 50 years. And here's the chat with Adam now. Okay, Adam, thanks for taking the time out with us to speak about how Barrow's season's gone so far today. I mean, we'll get straight into it. How do you think things have gone in your first season back in the Football League for nearly 50 years? I suppose with the disruption with Everett leaving in the summer, it was always sort of going to be a consolidation, survival, if you want to call it, season, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think everyone knew it was going to be tough. It was going to be tricky, as you say, losing your manager and then a bit of a restructuring, really, that you could say it always takes a bit of the stability that you would have had on the back of being promoted had Everett stayed, and obviously a lot of the players stayed around, so it did make things a lot trickier. You could probably say it was the way I've looked at it is it's like being in a somebody being asleep for a long length of time, waking up in a completely different area to what they've been used to, doing a completely different thing. That's the way that it's gone about. So it was a bit of a rebuild, but I think overall, obviously, there's been a few hiccups along the way, but it's looking very good now for potentially being in the Football League next season, which is what it's all about.
Obviously, whenever it left in the summer was a big disappointment, but sort of understandable going to a club as big as Bolton. Do you think they made the right decision in bringing in David Dunn in the first place? And do you think maybe the right decision to get rid of him when they did?
It's a tough one, really. I think the board, they wanted to try and follow that same path as what they had with Ian Evatt. With Ian Evatt, they brought somebody in that didn't have a relative amount of managerial experience, but he was a name in the game, and things just seemed to follow that path and stuck well. Obviously, we have the keys with getting people like Matt Platt. Matt Platt is someone that's worked with David Dunn in the past, and I think a lot of that had to do with it, that link with Blackburn Rovers as well. So I think that's the path that they went down. I think the board themselves have realised that maybe they needed to go down a bit more of an experience route, but as you do, you know they've appointed David Dunn. I think the decision maybe to let him go ended up being a bit soon. Maybe they could have given him a bit more time, obviously with the appointment of Michael Jolly, which ended up being a short-lived one and not the greatest, as you say there. I think maybe they could have given David Dunn that little bit more time to try and steady things and get things going. And who knows what would have happened. But I think the board have just looked at the situation at the time and the points that the club were picking up. And I think they felt that they needed to do something, and they needed to do something on the fast side.
I suppose it's a learning process for the board as much as anyone, isn't it? Because it's a completely different setup to being in the National League, isn't it? Being in the EFL and the challenges of staying in there as well, especially. I suppose it's been difficult for them.
Absolutely, they're constantly learning. They've had a lot of things thrust upon them in such a short space of time. If you look at it from the decision being made on the 17th of June, and then a month later they're losing the manager, and so on the case of having to look for a manager, they're also having to do all the other things off the pitch to get the club ready for the Football League. And at the same time, you've got the pandemic on us, which hasn't made things any easier. So it's been a massive learning curve for them. But I think they're getting round to it. They're getting there, the same as everyone else. And it's just all about now that big thing of being a Football League side next season and having the fans back in, being able to do it properly.
You seem to have put together the basis of a quite decent, solid squad for this level, though. When I looked at when we did our pre-season preview episode back in September, we did say that we didn't think you'd be in trouble. We felt you'd probably be lower mid-table, but pretty safe. And one of the key things, though, the player was already there, is Scott Quigley. How important have his goals been for you this season?
Well, I think now they have been. He's the top scorer with 11 goals, and he's played his part massively in this revival that they've been going on for. One of the biggest problems you had was it's the luck that they had at the start of the season with injuries. Scott Quigley, for one, was suspended for the first 3 games of the season because of his red card in the Notts County game, which was the final game for Barrow before the National League was suspended last season. So he missed the first 3 games with that 3-match suspension. But then after that, he picked up a little bit of an injury in the next one as well. So he was without Scott Quigley for probably about a month of the season. There's been other injuries. Mike Jones, who was a massive, massive player when David Dunn brought him in, and he was really looking like he was hitting the heights and being the leader in the centre of midfield that the club needed. He picks up an injury which has ruled him out for the rest of the season. Matt Platt, a key defender, he's been ruled out for quite some time throughout the season. So the injury side of things, David Dunn was never able to play a settled team that he will have wanted. And it was always chopping and changing, and the luck just didn't seem to be there in games. I mean, if you look at all the results this season, there's only a couple of times that Barrow have been beaten by more than one goal. They've been in it in games all the way, but just the fine margins at one end of the pitch and the other, and just that little bit of luck that hasn't been with them at times this campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about obviously Mike Jones there, we might as well get on to the ex-Carlisle men in the squad, because there's quite a few, isn't there? You've got Jamie Devitt, Mike Jones, Pat Brough and Connor Brown as well. Very short spell Connor Brown had at Carlisle, but the rest of them a little bit longer. And how are they all getting on?
Well, Connor Brown sadly now isn't part of the 22 with the rebuild that went on in January, but with Connor Brown, he's still around the club. He's still at training. He's still an integral part of the whole close-knit squad that they've got, which was the massive thing when Rob Kelly came back in for his second spell as caretaker. He brought that close-knit squad back together. It was massively important for him. So he's a great lad around the club. Obviously, Jamie Devitt, he's starting, I think, to show what Jamie Devitt's all about. He's been another person, as in, that's been so unlucky with injuries and with fitness over the time since leaving Carlisle, you could probably say. And he's starting to show exactly what he's all about. He's been a great addition to the squad. Patrick Brough he's phenomenal down that left-hand side of the field. It's amazing to think that he played centre-half for the whole of last season in the incredible run which saw Barrow promoted. He's come back out to the left-hand side of midfield now, playing as a left wing back, and he's been so key for Barrow.
Funny you mentioned about Brough, because he started out as a left wing in Carlisle's youth setup, and I think he was, when he got brought into the first team squad, he was used as almost a cover left back. I think it was the start of the 13-14 season, if that rings a bell, when Greg Abbott basically got sacked as Carlisle manager. He came in and played a couple of games. And bless him, he played a game away at Bradford and we were 4-0 down at half-time in that game. And he got subbed off. He hadn't played badly, but I think it was basically just Greg saying, I'm taking you out the firing line, because he was having a bit of a tough time. But yeah, I mean, Pat's one of those ones I think a lot of Carlisle fans look back and think maybe could have done with keeping him a bit longer. But he also had Danny Granger in front of him in the team. So I think he was always going to have a challenge to get a starting spot for Carlisle. But it's good to hear they're all doing really well. In terms of the actual game itself, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because I think it's been described as a derby in the media, and I can understand why. It is something to get excited about. But the impression I get is that both set of fans don't really see it so much as a derby. And I think from the Barrow viewpoint, you guys seem to think of Morecambe more as your derby, don't you, historically?
Yeah, well, obviously it's the whole thing of Barrow originally being classed as part of Lancashire, and since the early 70s, it's become Cumbria. And I think a lot of the people, all the people that are old in the tooth, they look at it as Morecambe is the derby. It always has been. I mean, myself, I go for a walk of a morning in the area that I go for the walk. I can look across and I see Heysham Power Station. That's how close Barrow is to Morecambe. So it's Morecambe will always be, and I think for the younger generation, we played a lot more competitive fixtures against Morecambe than we did Carlisle. So I think on that side, people will look at it as Morecambe being the main rivalry. But I think as time goes on, the more games that we play together, I know you've got eyes further up and hoping to be a level above Barrow next season, but it's one of those, isn't it? The more games that they play against each other, the more that rivalry will grow. And we're in Cumbria now. It's a part of Cumbria, so why not enjoy having a Cumbrian derby?
What's the future ambitions for the club then? Because when I look at Barrow, they've done brilliantly the last couple of years, obviously, to get themselves into the EFL. But I think for the couple of times I've been to Holker Street, the setup is still, I suppose you'd argue, still fairly non-league. You've done the work to the Holker Street end. Is there plans for the ground and things like that? And things like the youth setup as well? Because obviously that's one thing that probably, I wouldn't say caught you guys unaware, but because you've come up so quickly, you haven't had a chance to really get a proper youth setup like clubs at EFL level have. What are the hopes there?
The board are continuing to build the club up. They know there's things that need doing, and they've got ambitions, they've got plans. And again, it's one of those things that the longer that you're a football league club, the more chance of those plans happening. There's the fan zone that's been built. that area of the pitch, that area of the ground was desolate. It was a five-a-side pitch for a lot of years, and there was just nothing on it. Now all of a sudden, next season when the fans are back into Holker Street, there's going to be a vibrant area there where the fans will enjoy a proper bar with the facilities there, TVs all around it, surround sound speakers for the music, an actual area that will start being loved and start generating money. So they've already started the things on there. They've got plans on generating the stands, moving the changing rooms under the main stand as well to create more space inside the actual club in itself for trying to generate revenue. So that's what it's all about for the board now. They've got ambitions. They've started off doing it, and they aren't going to stop either. They'll continue to carry on regenerating Holker Street. They know that it's had a lot of years where it's not been loved, and it's all about turning that process around. And I know on the youth side of things, again, that's another thing where there is ambitions there to improve the youth side of things. Craig Rutherford does a sterling job as the community head at Barrow AFC, and works well with the youth side of things as well. He's on the club's coaching staff as well, forming that little link between the youth side and the first team. So again, it's one of those things. The longer that you're a Football League club, the more chance of pushing on and getting those things in place.
Absolutely. Before we get on to the predictions, Adam, I've just got to ask you also a personal question here. You obviously came to start working with BBC Radio Cumbria a few years ago doing the commentary. Could you have imagined that you would have been a Football League commentator in a few years' time?
Not at all. I mean, I started this journey back in 2016 as a volunteer for my local hospital radio. And never in a million years, if you'd have told me 4 years later you're going to be travelling to Derby on the 5th of September to commentate on the first round of the League Cup, I'd have been looking at you thinking, what the heck are you on? It's been an amazing journey, and it's just fantastic, as I say, that it's at this point now. I was a BBC commentator for the club that I've supported for 20 plus years as a Football League side.
Brilliant. Okay then, Alan, let's do the predictions then. What do you reckon for the game this weekend?
I can't really give you a prediction on the score. I'm going to be boring on that front. I landed myself in it when I did a prediction on our sports show prior to the first derby, so I think I'll steer clear of that one. But
Okay.
Hopefully, I mean, it's two sides that need the points for obviously differing reasons. So I hope to see a very open, good game of football. I don't think Barrow showed their true potential in the game back at Brunton Park in October. I think they got caught in the headlights a little bit, maybe. So I think they're going to be a bit different this time round. I think they're going to be set up a lot differently. So just hopefully a decent game of football, I think, between two sides, as I say, that are desperate for the points for differing reasons.
Cheers, Adam. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Hey, no problem at all, Lee. Thanks a lot, mate.
Oh, thanks again to Adam for that chat. Really, really good to catch up with him on how things are getting on down Furness Way. Barrow this season, Mike, in a strange way, as much as they're struggling near the bottom, I think they'll probably be reasonably happy with how things have gone, considering all the disruption they've faced throughout the campaign.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy that they're on their third manager already. It's been a bit of a mad season, and there's been news today, hasn't there, that there could be a club in the league facing administration, which, from a Barrow point of view, would be nice. Because they're not quite safe yet. I wouldn't say that they should be really scared of getting relegated, but they're not quite safe either. And I think if the rumoured team is to go into administration, that'll probably make them pretty much safe, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Colchester's the rumoured team, isn't it?
Yeah.
By all accounts. And when you look at the table, at the moment, Barrow is sitting there. They're 6 points clear of Southend with 2 games in hand on Southend. They're 8 points clear of Grimsby with 1 game in hand on Grimsby. Grimsby are not going to win 3 games in the remaining 7 fixtures. They're just not. They've only won 7 games all season. And similarly, Southend, they've won 8 games out of 40 all season. At maximum, they're going to win 1 more game, probably. And I just can't see it. I think Barrow will be fine. Barrow fans, if you listen to this, apologies that I've probably just put a jinx on it all for you, but there you go. But the form Barrow have picked up, I think they should be all right for the rest of this season. And yeah, you look at it in the recent games, they've got some good results in recent matches. Obviously, beating Newport's the one that stands out, doesn't it? Jamie Devitt getting the goal in that game, didn't he?
I love him.
I think we both do, don't we? I'm just hoping maybe he has a little, flu bug or something this weekend and doesn't fancy playing. That'd be grand, wouldn't it?
That'd be nice
because he's nailed on to score. Otherwise, I think it's fair to say, having scored for Newport against us early this season. I just feel like if I was a Barrow fan, I'd be looking and thinking, okay, it's been a bit of a bumpy ride at times, but actually, we're going to be an FL team next season. That's the most important thing, and then we build from there. Because when you look at the squad they've put together, actually, particularly since January, if they can clear out some of the deadwood, they've got a decent base to build on for next season, haven't they, when you look at it?
Yeah, definitely. Players like Devitt, by all accounts, Pat Brough has more than proven himself. Quigley, of course. They've got, the sort of spine of a good team. And I think once they establish themselves as a Football League club, they can attract other Football League players. When you're the sort of new club on the block, it's quite hard to maybe make them establish Football League signings. But yeah, good luck to them. But it's about establishing themselves as a proper Football League club now, isn't it? And Adam touched on obviously need to set up have a proper youth team and all the rest of it. But I was thinking, we talked about the A595. If they're to have a youth team, I think young lads from the likes of Whitehaven, they're not going to want to go down to Barrow, are they? Really? We'll still have the.
They might pick up a few.
I think we'll still have first dibs on them young lads, and even young lads from the likes of sort of Kendal.
A lot of them tend to get picked up by Preston, though, don't they? And occasionally by Morecambe.
They do.
As well,
that's the thing. Even Blackburn as well. So, yeah, I think they won't have much of a catchment area for attracting, young kids. But
the challenge they face as well is the fact that at the moment their training base is in Manchester, isn't it? Right now, I can't remember. I think they have Macclesfield or Bury's old training ground. I think they use now. They're down that way anyway, basically, and that actually kind of works to their advantage for the first team level, though, doesn't it? Because unlike us with the issue of the players having to travel so far, because travelling to Barrow from Manchester is near enough travelling to the same time travelling up to Carlisle, isn't it? Really, because the road's so bad all the way from the motorway down to Barrow. So having a training base in Manchester actually really helps them with players, particularly, doesn't it? Because they only have to travel up at the weekend for the games, don't they?
Yeah, well, Devitt lives in Manchester, doesn't he? So that's probably more appealing to him than maybe joining us, because training is relatively on his doorstep, and we moan about our location, and yeah, you'd have Barrow in there competing with the likes of Oldham or whatever for location. When you only have to go to Barrow itself on every other Saturday.
Yeah, so it's much easier for them in that sense, isn't it, I suppose? So it's going to be a tough test, this one, though, isn't it, I think? Because you look at their defence, they've been fairly solid for most of the season, haven't they? They haven't got the worst defence. They've got, I was looking there, their goal difference is actually, I think it's the second or the third best. It's second best in the goal difference in the bottom half of the division on -3. So they're not far off a positive goal difference. And actually, I had a look through their results, and they've only conceded more than 3 goals on 3 occasions. And one of those was a 3-3 draw against Bolton. And yeah, I think the heaviest defeat was a 4-2 defeat to Crawley. So they've not been beaten by more than 2 goals this season. A lot of 1-0s and 2-0s and things like that. So, they do keep it generally quite tight, don't they? So it's not going to be an easy test in that sense, is it?
No, it's not at all. And like I say, they're not 100% safe either. So they'll still sort of have them. They won't be have the sandals on and act like they were already on holiday. They'll still. No. And obviously, it's a derby. relatively speaking. So it'll be a big game for them, and it's just a shame, really, isn't it, that fans can't go, because this would be a fantastic away game.
It would be, and it's one of those things. If we were by some miracle able to go through the playoffs and they stayed up, you'd be a little bit disappointed, thinking, "Oh well, that was the first chance of a Cumbrian derby in 50 odd years, and there you go. We're not even getting the chance to go there." But never mind. Yes, I think this is going to be one of those tough games, isn't it? And I think it'll be interesting to see how things go with that one. But hopefully, a good, entertaining game and a Carl United win. Most importantly of all.
Have you seen their penalty area as well?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a beach, isn't it? Really, I don't think it's as worse as some teams overall, the pitch. But I mean, to be honest, from going down there to watch Workington play a couple of times, and also for Carlisle pre-season games, the pitch is a massive improvement on what it used to be. It used to be really, really bobbly and not a football league quality pitch at all. That looks like it probably is a football league quality pitch, but it's its first season and it's bedding in basically. So it's going to take a while before it's up to the standard you'd expect, I think.
Well, the issue with the penalty area was that they had a digger on it most of the way through the summer, because they were sorting out that stand. So it didn't have much sunlight, and so it's asking for a Joe Riley divot goal, to be honest. And fingers crossed, that's what we get.
Get him on the Brunton Park pitch practicing this week, and just say aim for any divot you can, and then sound it out when you get there. Have a good look at the goal mouth, Joe. Okay, well, let's move on to the next one after that one then, Mike. Newport County. This is arguably the biggest game of the season so far, I think. It's fair to say.
Yeah, definitely.
Simply because they're the team in 7th place and they're the team we're gunning for. If we do manage to get a good result at Barrow, we get a win. I mean, the thing is, they actually play on the Friday night against Mansfield. So come Saturday, if they've lost 1-0 Mansfield or drew 1-1, we'll know what the result's been, and we'll know, right, we can get within a point or go level on points with them. That's the thing that'll stand out from it. So it really is a huge game, this one. It's our game in hand on a lot of other teams, and obviously the fact that it's Newport County as well means it is a really big opportunity to make a statement and push for a playoff place, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I'd go as far to say if we can win this, then I will really... I mean, I've got a bit of hope now, but if we win this, I'll really, really, really be believing that this is going to be something special. But that's the one that we really, really have to get the points from. And again, it's, we can't lose it, basically. I think if we lose it, then that's it. A draw is not favourable, but we won't lose any ground on them. But yeah, the definition of a 6-pointer.
We haven't won at Newport in, I'm just checking here, in pretty much exactly 33 years. 2nd of April 1988, we won 2-1 at Newport County, obviously in the previous guise of the club, which is effectively connected to the club now, isn't it, I think? So yeah, it's one of the ones we really need to dig out a result for the first time in a long time there. I mean, start of the season, we felt they might struggle a little bit, maybe struggle to get a playoff place this season because of the amount of turnaround of players they'd had. But I mean, Michael Flynn has done an incredible job at this club, hasn't he? When you look at it, they spend the vast majority of the season in the top 7. I think since the 3rd game, they've only had one game where they've been outside the top 7, and they spent 12 games top of the league as well at one point. They've obviously dropped off from there, and it's been a bit of a fight, but they've kept themselves in the playoff contention. And when you look at the job he's done, surely there's going to be bigger clubs sniffing around him in the summer, whatever happens.
Yeah, you'd think so. I mean, my prediction in the mid-season preview was that they would drop out of the playoffs ultimately, but they have been clinging on in there. And, you look at the squad, they're almost the opposite of us in a lot of ways. They have a lot of really good experienced heads in there. Obviously, Kevin Ellison, who's 86 now, I think. Nicky Maynard, Sheen, Taylor. They've got a lot of experienced heads, but at the same time, if they're going to be doing a bit of Saturday, Tuesday, older players can't handle that. And having said that, we have struggled to handle that. But,
Yeah, I'm looking at their last lineup here, Mike, and Maynard, I have to say, actually, really smart signing that on loan from Mansfield Town. I think he was one of those ones, isn't he, where they just couldn't really afford to keep paying his wages at the current rate, so they let him go there. And he's looked a good sign. I mean, Patrick Hammond, he's one player who's been brilliant for them over recent seasons. He's not been quite as effective this season, hasn't he? Really, they've looked more to other players up front, really. And like you said, you look at it, there's a lot of experience in there. I mean, the signing of Joe Ledley in recent weeks as well stands out as one that they've brought him in, and he's one who potentially could help drag them over the line, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. And they've done well. Like I say, they've done really well to cling on in there, because in January they lost quite a few key players. I think they had a few on loan, didn't they?
Didn't they lose pretty much all? I think only bar one of their loan players. All of them went back, didn't they? I think. Yeah. It's going to be a very, very tough game. But like you said before, if we can win it, it really shows a sign of intent from us. Yeah, their recent form. It's interesting. I didn't mention this in the Barrow bit. Barrow are 7th in the last 6 games form table. Newport are 9th in the last 6 games form table. Guess which team's 8th in the last 6 games form table?
Surely not us.
It's us, yeah. We're sandwiched in between the two of them, so we're basically playing two teams with very similar form to us right now.
Yeah.
Newport, interestingly, they won last time out against Bolton. A bit of a shock result. That I think everyone was expecting Bolton to go down there and get a result, and apparently there was a bit of a goal off scramble at the end where they looked like the ball might have crossed the line, but didn't quite. And
it was similar to the Zanzala / Bennett goal. That if you've seen it, it's
Yeah, prior to that win over Bolton, they had 3 successive defeats, and they were against Port Vale, Orient and Barrow. And I know Port Vale and Orient have picked up a bit of form, and Barrow aren't doing too badly, but arguably they're 3 teams they would have been looking at thinking, right, we can get at least 7 points out of these games, wouldn't you? You'd think, for a team like Newport in the position they're in.
Yeah, you'd think so. And they've got to play Cambridge, and they've still got to play Cheltenham. And their last game of the season is against Southend, who, we both agree haven't been very good. But if Southend have to win that game to stay up, they might churn out a performance.
I think Southend will be long dead and buried by then, I'm afraid. So I think it's one of those ones where you're looking and you think to yourself, right, they're going to get 3 points, so we've got to do better, or we've got to equal that at the very least, I think, on the last day. And that's why in a sense, we're quite lucky that we've got Walsall on the last day, who just seem to be faltering towards a very boring 20th place finish right now. Yes, I expect this to be a tough game. And when I picked out the sort of danger men for them, obviously I picked out Ledley, and we mentioned Maynard, and Josh Sheehan's the obviously other one. I think he picked up a Welsh cab not quite recently, didn't he? I think so. He's doing really well for himself. And I can see this being a game where we're going to have to really dig in to get a result, I think. I think Barrow is a game where we can look to try and dominate them as well as they've done recently. But this is the game where we might have to soak up a bit of pressure as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
In terms of team news for the 2 games, maybe a little question over Joe Riley. Obviously picked up a foot injury, didn't he, against Scunthorpe, but there hasn't been much mention of it, so I suspect he's probably going to be okay on that basis, you'd think, wouldn't you? Josh Coyote closing in on return. He started running. It's one of the ones, maybe he'll be on the bench for one of these games, possibly, you never know. Danny Devine, I think they're just waiting to get this reserve game played, aren't they, so we can get another 90 minutes under his belt there. And Morgan Feeney's closing in on return as well, hopefully in the next week or 2. And the 3 that are out for the season are Jamie Armstrong with ankle injury and Reece Bennett and Brennan Dickinson with knee injuries. Although it's not been confirmed, that has it, but I think it's basically been hinted by Beach, hasn't it, that neither of them are likely to play this season. So there you go. Okay, predictions. First up, Mike, before you do yours, Dan very kindly, probably because of the fact that he got the last 2 games bob on, was determined to get his predictions in for this one. So Dan sent me a voice note, and here are his predictions.
I'm going to go for the following predictions. A good solid 2-0. I'm not going to abandon it after the last 2 games. No, I didn't bet the double. Again, I'm not bothered who scores. It's all about the points. And I'd take a point at Newport. I'm going to go for a very dour 0-0 on the absolute motocross track of a pitch.
There you go. That's Dan's predictions. Once again, really annoy me because he won't pick any goal scorers. There you go. So go on, Mike. Let's have yours as well.
Well, I'm going to go for a sound 2-1 win against Barrow. Mellish and Riley will with his Divot goal, and because obviously Devitt is going to score, so we're not going to keep a clean sheet in that one. And the Newport game, I'm going to take the sweatiest 1-0 win in the history of football, and Mellish again in that one.
You know what? My predictions are almost exactly the same as yours, so I'm going to go for a 2-1 win at Barrow as well. But I'm going to go Mellish, and I'm going to have Zanzala as the other goal scorer. Devitt will score the goal for them, obviously. And yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-0 win at Newport as well. And I reckon a John Mellish goal in the 87th minute to win it. I think it'll be a great defensive rearguard performance. I think Paul Farman will be man of the match, some brilliant saves, and we'll win 1-0. So there you go. I've gone off the your 5-0s and your 4-0s now. I'm not doing anything stupid like that anymore. It's all about
You've gone off Callum Guy ever scoring.
Yeah, it's all about sweaty wins. That's all I care about. I don't care about anything else. There you go. Callum Guy is going to set up all 3 goals, by the way. That's just the way it's going to be.
Okay. Yeah.
So there you go. All right, let's quickly do the X-Files then, Mike. And my God, it was a busy week for goals, wasn't it? Look at the list here.
It was.
It's a fair few, so deep breath, let's go through them. And amazingly, no Charlie Wyke there either. That's the thing that amazes you. All these goals.
He must be injured or something, God.
But we know who the new Charlie Wyke is, though, don't we? We'll get onto him in a minute.
Yeah.
Elliot Watt, he scored for Bradford City. In the same game, Andy Cook actually scored 2 goals as well. I think was it a 4-1 win they picked up as well? I think it was against someone. Can't remember who it was, but yeah. So there's some goals from ex-Carlisle players. Byron Webster, he scored for Bromley at the weekend. I watched a bit of Stockport against Bromley the other day. It was on BT Sport. Don't let anyone ever tell you that the National League is anywhere near the standard of the EFL, because it really is not. That was not a good game of football I watched. And bear in mind, I watched 90 minutes of Cal United versus Leighton Orient the other week, so I've got every right to criticise a crap game of football, quite frankly. Okay, Mark Ellis, he scored 2 goals, a goal a game, in the 2 games over the Easter weekend for Notts County. I think his 3rd goal since signing for them on loan, isn't it, as well? He seems to be a bit of a goal machine for them. Fair play to the lad. Next up is the one we say is the new Charlie Wyke. It's Jerry Yates. He got a brace in one game and then scored 1 goal in another game for Blackpool over the last weekend.
He's absolutely on fire this season, isn't he?
He's going to get a big move in the summer, isn't he? There's no doubt. If Blackpool don't go up, he's going to get a championship move. I can't see anything other than that. Jamie Devitt, as mentioned before, he scored the winner for Barrow with a free kick against Newport. Name we haven't seen for goals for quite a while. Brad Potts, he scored for Preston North End. Cole Stockton, he scored for Morecambe, but he also missed a penalty in the previous game at the weekend. Here's a name we really don't hear very often in terms of goal scoring. Sean McGinty, the 1-minute wonder. He scored a penalty for Greenock Morton. Scottish football obviously returned recently, the lower levels. Naki Wells, he scored for Bristol City. Tom Lawrence got an absolute belter for Derby County. I don't know if you saw that one, Mike. It was sort of very reminiscent of some of the long-range ones he scored for us. Really, really good hit. And finally, Richie Bennett, and this brings us on to signings, he scored for Hartlepool because he's just signed on loan for Hartlepool United for the rest of the season from Stockport County. So sadly, we don't get to see the dream partnership of Bennett and Madden up front for Stockport, but never mind there. But he seems to be doing all right and settling quickly at Pools. And the other transfer bit of news we got, you spotted this one, I think, Mike, or you highlighted something about this, was Jeffrey Bonacana has signed for Icelandic side Magni. No idea what level or who they are, but there you go.
Which I think he's 27 years old, and it's his 16th or 17th club of his career.
That's Trevor Benjamin-esque, isn't it? he played for like 30-odd clubs in his career, didn't he? He was incredible. And there you go. That's it. That's the exclusive. And that's the end of today's episode. Mike, thanks once again for joining me. It's going to be an interesting few weeks, isn't it, really? You know, the run-in now, really, when we're in the death throes of this season. And I just have this feeling we might just nick one of those playoff places. And there's a link, I put it up on Twitter the other day, where you can predict the results for the rest of the season. And being the stupid optimist that I am, I managed to predict us to only lose one more game, and that was at Bolton. I think we only sort of drew, I think, 2 or 3 of them maybe, and won the rest. and we ended up finishing, I think, 5th place in my prediction. It's absolute nonsense. But then when you look at it, if we win our 2 games in hand, we're only 4 points behind 3rd place Tranmere. That's how insanely tight it is.
I really do reckon, and I know I said it on Twitter the other day, but if we do make the playoffs, I would back us to go up, because I think the character that you need to bounce back from this slump that we've had, I think the togetherness that it'll build within the squad, you'd
the form
really,
as well
really
would be in as well.
us.
The form we'd have to hit to get to that position as well. It would play a big part, I reckon. But yeah, interesting. We were actually going to. I completely forgot to actually bring this up. But we were going to talk about the running, but maybe we'll do that next week. The last 6 games. But when you look at it, the home games we've got left are all against teams that are below us. There's real chances to pick up maximum points from those home games, isn't there?
Definitely. Whereas
the away games, there's a few tough ones in there, but you never know. The dream lives on, doesn't it? That's the way you look at it, isn't it? So there you go. So yeah, in terms of specials, I haven't had a chance to put together the special one I did with Dan yet about his favourite 11. There's no quiz this week as well, obviously, in case anyone had noticed. What we're going to do next time, though, when all 3 of us are on, Mike, you're going to pick the players, aren't you? And you're going to test me and Dan.
Yeah.
A true heavyweight bout. A heavyweight bout, I think it's fair to say, in more ways than one. But there you go. So yeah, if you've got any comments or any feedback, if there's anything you'd like us to discuss on the show, please send them in via Twitter to @BruntonBugle or by email to bruntonbugle@gmail.com. We want to start planning for what we're going to do during the summer as well soon, because I don't think we're going to do like regular weekly episodes. We might get a bunch of specials put together, basically. So if there's anything you particularly want us to talk about, let us know and we'll get a few recorded and then we can put them out over the summer when like the Euros are and things like that. If you haven't already, remember you can subscribe to the podcast via all good podcast apps, including Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. Please do so. Give us a review if you haven't already. Really, really helpful they are. I've seen a few more coming recently. Big thanks for that. If you can give us a 5-star review, that would be lovely stuff. Had a look at the world map of the listeners there, Mike, and I don't think we've got any new countries by the looks of things. No, still plodding along with the same ones. If you know anyone who lives in some random weird country, just tell them to listen. Download one just so we can tick it off.
Or if you're going into a random country, like for work reasons or whatever, just tune in that country. So,
that's the best way to do it, yes. If you can do that, that'd be brilliant. Mike, thanks once again. Hopefully we'll have all 3 of us back on next week and we do that quiz and we can discuss another couple of good results and start making our plans for a trip down to Wembley at the end of May. That's what we're hoping for, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
That's the dream.
Thanks for joining me. Thanks, everyone, and up the Blues.